You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look me better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the first part of What If Deku Enters Princess Bride. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Hector Flores on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. A young girl is seen playing a video game with her twin brother. The brother was very sick, and was coughing quite loudly when they heard a knock on the door of the bedroom. They were playing Street Fighter 6 with an old refurbished system on an old TV they bought for her brother's birthday. As their mother and their grandmother walked into the room, they were laughing as the sister was jumping in the joy that she beat her brother yet again. "Kids, your granny Nana decided to visit us since she heard little Izuku was feeling under the weather, so she decided to bring him a present so that he can get better." Lena Lee immediately asked if it was a new game, but Izuku asked if it was a book about heroes and their quirks. Nana laughed and she said that no, it was an old book, that has been in her family for a very long time. Lena Lee about it being a book about stuffy old history, boring, and with no pictures. Nana smiled. "Actually no, it is the story how about our family was first founded. It is a story of monsters, pirates, selfish royals, backstabbing nobles, and the pirate that was the most feared pirate in the seas, the dread pirate Roberts." Both kids instantly became interested in this. Nana smiled and she opened the book. She began to tell them the story of the oppressed farm boy named Wesley, who was the serf of a noble family, but he was always asked to do things by their daughter named Buttercup, much for the annoyance of her sisters Blossom and Bubbles. Every day she would ask for more demanding requests, and Wesley simply would say, "As you wish." It was years after the death of their butler Mojo Jojo, that Buttercup finally understood that every time Wesley said "as you wish," he was declaring his love to her. As he stood there near her to comfort her at the funeral of her friend, the other two sisters not wanting to leave their sister's side, the sisters were near to comfort and give support to their sister. Years passed and Wesley had to take a trip across the sea to try and earn enough money so that he could ask for Buttercup's hand in marriage, but as the three sisters were sad to hear the news, they went to the cabin where Wesley lived, and they entered the cabin afraid due to them hearing of a pirate that took no prisoners, and they begged Wesley to reconsider. Wesley could not be persuaded, and as Buttercup and her sisters kissed him on the lips, things got a little bit more heated as time went by, and he spent the night making love to all three of them, as he left them each a flower and a note as he finally picked his backpack and left. It has been 2 years since they last heard from him. Letters were not so easy to send across great distances in those days, and they suddenly became depressed when they heard the news that the ship Wesley had been on had been attacked by the dread pirate Roberts. No survivors were expected, for this pirate took no prisoners. Tatsumaki had come to check on her baby brother since she is worried about his health, and was bringing him some lemon tea with honey to help with his horrible coughing. With a smirk on her lips she said, "Well, that is the shortest story I ever heard since Wesley is the main character." Nana laughs and tells her to stop teasing her siblings since she knows far too well that is not the end of the story, since Nana read it to her when she was their age. Nana began to continue the story and said that Buttercup and her sisters became very depressed after the news of what happened to the ship, but to get their minds off the death of the stable boy, their parents arranged for them to marry a local prince, by the name of Prince Humperdinck. Izuku then asked if the prince was related to the tech company Humperdinck Industries. Nana told him, that indeed, the company was founded by the descendants of the very same prince long ago, in a distant land where they had once been royals of a mighty kingdom. Supposedly there were quirks in this time, but since they were not as flashy or extravagant, people consider them to be talents people learned. As the royal wedding was coming closer and closer, the girls had terrible guilt-driven nightmares that an old woman would call them names, and insult, and would treat them as the lowest of the sum, feeling guilty that they would marry someone other than their beloved Wesley. A group of criminals decided to kidnap all three sisters to ask for a massive ransom. And even if the prince pays the ransom, they simply plan to murder the troops he sent to rescue them and sell them off to an enemy kingdom. But as they were riding the ship towards their hiding place, a long boat was seen following them. A man shot at the person on the other boat, but he missed. A giant threw a large rock at the boat and the man simply slapped it away like it was a fly. No matter, once we get to the cliff, we can get rid of him. That is going to be your job, Spaniard. The man had an elegant mustache, looked at the girls and then at the short Italian, and told him not to worry, he knows what he is doing. His giant friend asked if he wanted him to stay with him to help, and the man laughed and told the giant to better make sure the girls are safe. As they finally reached the cliff, they had lost sight of the boat and the masked man, and as the giant, the short man, and the girls left, the Spaniard began to laugh. So how long are you planning to hide? I know you are there. So come on, at least introduce yourself, no reason not to be civil about it. The masked man came out from behind a pillar. I was not hiding, I sort of fell asleep waiting for you to get here. I've been waiting for the last 3 hours. I don't need to introduce myself, you know me, I am well known in these waters, I am the dread pirates Roberts after all, but who are you? The man first asked him to show him both of his hands, and he saw that he had only 10 fingers. My name is Inigo Montoya, sorry to ask you to show your hands, but I am looking for a man who has 6 fingers on his right hand. Roberts begins to think, Montoya, there is only one Montoya that I know of, Domingo Montoya, Mstr swordsmith, a true tragedy when someone as skilled as him dies. I remember since I commissioned a sword from Domingo Montoya. Are you related to this man? The Spaniard began to laugh. To think my father was famous enough to be known by a pirate of your esteem is quite flattering, but you are incorrect. My father did not die, he was murdered by the 6-fingered man I mentioned. He too commissioned a sword, but when he came for it, he was willing to pay for the sword, but somehow he heard that he was also made a sword for you, and he demanded that he be given both swords. I love my father, but to him doing this would be a betrayal of his art, so he refused. As they fought he killed my father. I was probably 5 or 6 at the time, I didn't care. I took my father's blade and fought this man. He gave me these 2 scars to remember him by. I have dedicated every second of my life to learning everything I could about swordsmanship. This blade is the blade my father made for the 6-fingered man. It has no equal except for yours, which he has stolen. He tossed the sword to Roberts, who marveled at the beauty and feel of the sword. It was truly a work of art. He went to slash a large rock. Inigo was worried that his sword would break, but the sword cut the large boulder with ease into 2 pieces. Inigo had to admit that he never thought that something like that was possible. Roberts told him the sword is a masterpiece, it could handle the strain of striking something like that, but to cut the needs power, speed, and precision, and Roberts could only do it with a blade of his caliber, 'cause anything else would have shattered. Now tell me, do I need to fight you, to rescue those 3 ladies? Indigo began to laugh, and he smiled as he caught the sword as saw Roberts throw it back at him. It would be a great tragedy if I miss sparring with such an accomplished man like yourself. So how about a short duel? Do not worry about the girls, my friend is making sure they are quite safe, and my boss would not dream of harming his merchandise, as he would call them. Roberts took out his blade, and they stood at the center of the area. I shall only use 1/5 of my abilities for this spar. I do not wish to kill you. After all, we might end up helping each other some other time. Maybe even hunt down that 6-fingered man. As the 2 men fought, Roberts simply parried and evaded every single strike. It was like child's play to him, but with every single strike, he would stand in a way to teach the young Spaniard a little something different about how he used his sword. To Inigo this was a friendly spar, he was using his full strength, but to Roberts, this was a lesson. As the man finally could not strike anymore, Roberts asked him, what did he learn? Inigo told him that he needed to work on his footwork and stamina. Roberts mentioned that a few dancing techniques could prove to be quite useful when fighting with a blade. Well, you must excuse me, but I still need to find your friend and employer. He threw him a small bottle and told him that it would help with his fatigue. As he left, Inigo began to laugh. Roberts is quite the interesting fellow. Not only did he teach me something I failed to notice, but he even left me this bottle to help me feel better. I swear that one day I shall repay the favor. As the man ran up the hill and saw the rather large man sitting by a tree, "Oh, you finally made it, Good, I do hate to sit near trees, I tend to break them. I gather my friend was killed, tragic, I have not met someone as nice as Inigo before. Roberts told him that Inigo is simply tired, he didn't kill him, he was merely catching his breath. So what is your story? The giant smiled, I am happy my friend is alive, so very well I shall tell you my story. I am FANFIC, I was a strong man for a circus until they let me go when I refused to kill a poor animal that I've been taking care of. That is when I was hired to do this disagreeable job, but I need money to live, and no one hires someone my size out of fear. Roberts told him that it was quite tragic, if they had met under different circumstances he was sure he would have made a great crew member on his ship. The vengeance, after all, is more than large enough for him to live on. That sounds nice, but sadly I need to knock you out, I was planning to hit you on the head with this rock, but you seem like a rather nice guy and I for one have not wrestled in some time. So how about it? They both entered into a massive circle that the giant was making with his feet as he had been talking. Remember, that if you fall out of the circle, or the bottoms of your feet leave the surface you lose. Roberts was sort of surprised that this large man was challenging him to sumo. They both came at each other trying to lift each other from the ground, but to the shocked FANFIC, he was lifted off the ground him and body slammed outside of the ring. He finally sat down on the ground, well that was fun, it still hurt, it will take me a couple of hours I should be fine. Except Roberts took another bottle from his belt and threw it at him, and told him that drinking that with a full cup of water he should be fine in a few minutes. FANFIC looked at him and laughed and told him he had no cup, to which Roberts pointed at the tree he was once standing near, in one of the branches was the tin cup and on the ground a canteen of water. He asked him if he knew where to find the girls and his boss. FANFIC smiled and said 50 feet in that direction it is not hard to find him, he more than likely is waiting there for either you or the soldiers. Not to worry he will make sure to return the favor later. As Roberts left FANFIC began to wonder what a strange young man, who knew that someone that feared would be this nice. As he finally got to the area where the three ladies and the supposed employer of FANFIC and Inigo were waiting for him, oh do relax, the girls are perfectly safe, you bested my Spaniard, and I am no match to you when it comes to brute strength since you beat my giant, so let me get comfortable and we can have a different sort of battle, a battle of wits. Roberts smiled and said, very well, we have this, smell, but don't taste. The Sicilian smelled it and said that he smells nothing, what you failed to smell is the most deadly poison known to man, it is odorless, tasteless, and dissolves in liquids, so here is what I propose, I shall poison a cup, but Buttercup shall ask us a single question, if you get the question right I drink, but if you get it wrong you drink, but if we both get it right we both drink. And he placed 3 cards on the stone slab, Buttercup took one of the cards and began to read, what crawls on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 3 in the evening. The Sicilian smiled at him and put up his hand, just before we should introduce ourselves, but I already know who you are, my name is Vizzini. As the introduction was over he smiles, and they both answered, man, which was correct, and they both took a drink from the cup and the man fell to the ground. Buttercup and her sisters were shocked, so if the cup was poisoned why aren't you dying? Roberts told him he lied, it was just a small sleeping agent, the guy will simply wake up with a headache, but nothing was going to be that bad for him, he was rather polite. Buttercup is seen as angry at hearing his words, darn, and here we were hoping that you both would die. He immediately cut the ropes on their hands and smiled, ladies, you don't even know me, what have I done for you to unleash your venom on me? Bubbles tell him that they know who he is, he can try to deny it but they know that the dread pirate Roberts sails these waters, does he deny that it is him? Roberts does a small bow and smiles, indeed I am the dread pirates Roberts, with pride, what have I done to you 3 to make you wish for my death? Buttercup tells him that he attacked a merchant ship, and everyone knows that he doesn't take prisoners, and he begins to laugh, and how do people know I kill all these people if they are supposed to be dead and nobody survived to tell the tale? This makes Blossom rather surprised at the question and she said it was either from finding a ship with the entire crew dead or someone was spreading rumors to get people to hate him enough to kill him. I might be a pirate my dears, but I am no demon, I do attack merchant ships, but usually they carry dangerous contraband or even slaves, so of course, I kill a few people, but I do let those that were forced to do that dirty work or the slaves live. I may be a pirate but I have a code I follow, I shall not harm the innocent, or those who can't defend themselves, but tell me who is this man whom you think I killed. Buttercup tells him that he was a farm boy, and the man they loved, his name was Wesley, so please just kill us so that we may rejoin with our beloved. Roberts asked them if they don't have a groom they are supposed to marry, they glare at him, and tell him they would rather die than marry that man. It was arranged by their parents after they find out Wesley died, and they would never arrange it otherwise. So you wish to die, very well, as you wish. That is when Buttercup came up to the man and without caring for her safety she took off the mask and seeing his face, she immediately slapped him and then kissed him, and the other two did the same thing. Roberts asked why the slap and kissed. They all said the slap was for making them think that he was dead, and the kiss was for the rescue. Wesley, if you are here, where is the real Dread Pirate Roberts? Blossom asked him. Wesley simply laughed, because I am the real Dread Pirate Roberts. It is a title that has been passed down from one captain to the next. The last Roberts retired, he is living in a vineyard he grew with the money he made in Patagonia. So was the same with the other Roberts before him. The title is not the only thing we get his abilities and talents. We are trained by the previous Roberts as he spent time as my first mate, so you see, I am not lying, I am the Dread Pirate Roberts. Let's face it, nobody would take the name the Dread Pirate Wesley seriously. As they were talking, the Sicilian began to get off the ground and began to complain about his headache. Well, I am not dead, that is a plus, but it was still a dirty trick to lie about the poison. Hey, what the hell are you four doing here? Shouldn't you have left already? Robert smiles and looks at the supposed man. I couldn't very well leave the daughter of one of my business partners alone on the ground, can I? Yes, I know about the ring, Viola, your dad told me all about it, so come over here, I got a bottle for your hangover. She immediately took off the ring and she went from an old short Sicilian to an average height black-haired beauty. The only thing that changed regards her clothes is that they changed to fit her body. That is not fair, you know that men don't take girls seriously in the underworld, so I had to pretend to be a guy, but to think that Dad would spill the beans about the ring. You two must be good friends. Roberts began to laugh. Actually, I have known them for a couple of years. They are the main suppliers for the medicines we use on our ship. Vizzini, your father that you pretended to be, is a business partner of mine, so of course, I know about you, your family, and the ring. As they talked, they saw the soldiers of Humperdinck and realized that there was no escaping. So he told Viola to run or the prince will kill her to make an example. She promised that one day she will pay back this favor as she ran away. As the troops and the prince finally reached them, the prince and his advisor got off their horses and went to check on the girls. Thank goodness, you three are not harmed. I was worried sick about what these ruffians would do to you. I gather this masked man is one of your kidnappers. Bubbles bows towards Prince Humperdinck and smiles. No, my lord, this young man is the man responsible for saving us from our kidnappers. He fought them off by himself, if we are to understand from what he told us. The prince smiles and looks at him, and tells him such acts of bravery should be rewarded, and they shall once they return to the palace. You three must need medical attention at worst, a bath and a warm meal at the best, so come with us to the castle where I may give you what you richly deserve. As the men handed him the reins of an extra horse they all took off towards the castle. At the same time, Viola took off toward her two employees, and found that Inigo and Fezzik were talking about what just happened to them. When Viola finally made it to them, okay, you two are all right, good, come on, let's go, we got things to do, no time to be lazy. After hearing this, they both asked who is she and why is she bossing them around. She tells them that she is their boss, to which Fezzik looks at her. Look, I might not be the smartest, but I know that our boss is a guy, not a girl. Inigo had to agree that there is no way their boss is this cute woman. She grumbles and put on the ring, turning back into the form of her father. Sounding like her father again. See, as I said, I am your boss. Inigo comments that he was not expecting his boss to be both appealing and smart, that this was a rare combination for a woman in this day and age, to which Viola took off her ring and told him there is no time for flirting, they need to go and save the masked man. Look, the masked man that you two met is a business partner of my dad. I don't doubt for a second that Humperdinck will try to kill him and claim that he rescued the girls by himself, but my dad will be very angry with me if his business partner dies and I could have saved him. If you think I am bad, my father and mother trained me, so you can imagine how bad things will get if they are angry. Inigo and Fezzik did say that one day they would do him a favor, so why not? The real question is, where would Humperdinck keep Roberts? Viola told them that he more than likely keeps him in the Zoo of Death and that her ex-girlfriend told her where the zoo was, and how to sneak into it. Meanwhile in the Zoo of Death, Prince Humperdinck, don't you think that putting him here will make the ladies question your word? You did promise them that this man would be rewarded. Humperdinck told Count Ruggin that what he said is that the masked man would get exactly what he deserves, and what he deserves is a slow and painful death. He saw Wesley strapped to one of the machines and glared at him. Do you honestly think that I would not know who you are? Those three have done nothing but talk about you every single time I met them. Do you think I would forget their descriptions of you, Wesley? First, you took my chance to be the first man they ever been with, and now you take my chance to rescue them and win their affections. What could I possibly give you other than death? Nana decided to put the bookmark where the story had stopped and closes the book. Lena Lee, Tatsumaki, and Izuku ask her why is she stopping. I thought that you didn't want to listen to this boring story, but I do have to stop for today since I do have to visit my other 3 grandchildren. We can continue the story tomorrow. Tatsumaki complains that it was finally getting good. She tells them good night and she leaves the room. Tatsumaki tucks both into their beds and goes to her room and goes to bed herself. The next day Nana returns to find Tatsumaki, Lena Lee, and Izuku waiting for her. She immediately sat down, and began to read. Now where did we leave off? Wesley was being strapped to a torture device in the Zoo of Death. The prince apparently calls it that because it used to hold animals that he buys and then releases to hunt them down. Izuku mentioned that is basically trophy hunting. Nana told him that basically, it is. Wesley was injured by the torture that the Count had been doing to him. The machine was designed to strp a person of life for 1 year per level, and in his sadistic glee, he kept a detailed record of what happened to every person that suffered and died because of it. To go as far as to ask the victims to describe their feelings for posterity. As he was made to endure the first level, Wesley screamed in absolute pain. The Count asked him to please be detailed on how he felt. Wesley told him that it felt like someone stole an entire year from his life, so basically dating him for a year. The Count almost looked hurt by his comment. I will have you know that I am a perfect gentleman, no one suffers when they date me. As the Count took notes on the recent experiment, for some odd reason, Prince Humperdinck came down to where the machine was. He was furious for some odd reason. He didn't even greet the Count or his assistant. So the 4 of you are truly in love. I could never break that up as long as you live, so how about we do something about that? He immediately flipped the machine to 50. The Count screamed that it was too high, as Wesley's scream was heard in the entire region. Inigo, Fezzik and Viola heard the screaming. Inigo mentioned that this screaming sounded like it came from hell. Viola didn't like the sound of it and said it was more than likely Roberts and so they need to hurry. I didn't expect him to try and murder him this quickly. The 3 of them searched the woods until he saw Humperdinck and the Count leave the oak tree. They wait for 10 minutes for the Count's assistant to come to the secret opening with a wheelbarrow. See, I told you this would work like clockwork. Now come on, let's go to rescue Roberts. Fezzik knock out that albino when he opens the door. The assistant didn't look that happy, and he was even less when he saw the giant punch his lights out when the door finally opened. They found the comatose body of Wesley still strapped to the machine. They finally got all the hoses and ropes off him, and began to wheel him over to the home of Miracle Max and his wife, since Viola knows where he lives. Viola knocked on the door opened and Max took one look at her and simply said, "The girl who broke my daughter's heart." He immediately shut the door on her face. Inigo and Fezzik asked what the hell was that about. Well, I sort of broke up with his daughter, and it seems that she wasn't the only one that was upset about it. Inigo said that they got a man that is little more than a steaming corpse, and they need his help to deal with the idiot prince and the 6-fingered man. Viola tells him to relax, she will take care of it. She knocks again and again. Max is trying to slam the door shut again except Fezzik stops him. Look, you already cause my family enough misery, what the hell do you want? So you can just leave and we can continue to pretend you never existed. Viola said that she is here for 2 reasons, one is to ask his daughter's hand in marriage. Max tells her that the last time his daughter asked for her hand in marriage and Viola told her to wait for a few days and she never returned. Well, circumstances kept me from returning, my father called me back home, you know my father since you worked with him before, so of course, I couldn't make it back in time. Max reluctantly says that sounds reasonable, but it still hurt his daughter and asked what is the second reason. A business partner of my father was tortured by the Count in the Zoo of Death, and I need your help in healing him. Max tells her what the hell could he do? He was kicked out of the royal palace, and he is more than likely to kill the guy than heal him. Inigo said that it shouldn't be a problem since he is already dead. He tells him to come on in, at least he could take a look at the guy, and as he begins his examination he says, actually there is a big difference between mostly dead to completely dead, and your friend here is just mostly dead. He just needs a little help to breathe so he can speak. He pumped some air into his lungs and asked him what was his reason for wanting to be alive. As he pushed down on his chest, Wesley was heard saying, "True love." Max had to admit that was a wonderful reason. True love is truly the most valuable reason there is, however here is the deal, if Max revives him, the guy must marry his daughter. His daughter and his wife run in and both are shocked at what he just said. If you force this guy to marry my daughter, I will kick you, you know far too well that she is in love with Viola. Max says fine, he will revive him, maybe his daughter and Viola can win his affection some other way. Viola said that it is not exactly impossible considering that he does quite a bit of business with her parents and he is engaged to marry the 3 ladies that Prince Humperdinck is supposed to marry. So if I revive him, I will make Humperdinck suffer. Why didn't you say so in the first place? Sure, how much do you have on you? Fezzik tells them 65 florins. Viola asked where did he hide that money. Fezzik told her in his money pouch and, I keep it around my neck. Viola was furious when she heard him. You mean to tell me you had that much money and you never told us? Fezzik simply handed Max the money as he said they never asked. Alright, medical treatment number 65. Valerie was taking a strange-looking thing and coating it with chocolate. She explained that the coating was to help the medicine go down easier. She told him that the medicine would need 15 minutes to take effect, and to be sure not to go swimming for an hour, giving the medicine to his daughter. I don't trust any of you with this medicine. Minerva told them that she was going to handle the medicine since her father didn't trust the others and she was still angry with Viola. As soon as she was sure the chocolate was dry and they had left her parents' place she fed it to him with a kiss. Viola asked her did she have to use her tongue. She said yes to make sure it went down. Fezzik was pushing the wheelbarrow towards a small hill. Wesley began to wonder, where was he? What is going on? He asked a person nearby, who just happened to be Minerva. She immediately stopped and looked at him. How can you talk? We gave you the medicine 9 seconds ago. Wesley simply said he was always a fast healer, otherwise, he would have not survived his training. So where am I? Inigo told him, you are currently in a wheelbarrow being pushed towards Humperdinck Castle to stop the wedding between the idiot and your little group of lovers. So we are planning to save them and we are hoping that you will help. Wesley thought of it and simply said, I got no weapon, we only have your steel, that guy's strength, my intellect, her cunning, and I don't even know who this person is. She introduces herself as Minerva, and she was a trained healer. So we got 6 people against a garrison of nearly 30 guards, and we have a wheelbarrow, a long black hooded tunic, a sickle, and some oil, we might have something. Minerva said that these folks are more than likely religious folks, so if he rode on that pale horse, wearing that black robe, and using that scythe, should be quite the frightening sight since they know the supposed dread pirate Roberts is dead. As Fezzik got on the horse, wearing the cloak, and wielding the scythe, Viola will hypnotize them to think that the horse and rider are on fire, but this will only work with the weak-minded, and with them being scared it should work. They finally reached the castle and they put their plan into motion. As Fezzik began riding towards the gate and screaming threats of doom that would befall them, all the guards began to fear after he claimed he was the dread pirate Roberts, and that no one would survive. Viola used her hypnotism on them and they saw the horse and rider burst into flames. The guards were scared to the point that they were literally scared shitless. they ran away leaving behind the captain of the guard who was frantically looking into his pocket. That is when he felt the scythe blade on his neck. Inigo walked towards him, so how about it? Give us the key to the gate or we take your life. The guard captain immediately handed over the key, and ran away. Well, that takes care of the guards. How are we going to delay the wedding for you to find them? Inigo told him that they will have to search. Wesley had a better idea. Why not try and find the count? He should know where they are, and both he and Inigo had some business with him. As they finally saw Ruggin make it to the gate and sent the knights under his command to eliminate the intruders, Inigo and Wesley took them down with ease. After seeing the knights be dispatched so easily, Ruggin pretended to stand ready to fight but instead ran away. As they saw that both Wesley and Inigo took after him, chasing him through the halls. As they finally reached the throne room, where Ruggin tried to throw a dagger at one of them, but Wesley managed to catch him before it impacted Inigo. Wesley was ready to attack when Inigo stopped him, and told him, "You save the women you love, leave this to me." Viola and Minerva showed up and told him they would take care of him if he gets hurt. Before Wesley left, he reminded Inigo to make sure that he recovers his sword, and Inigo said, "Of course, you did pay father for making that blade, I will make sure to give it back to you when I see you next." Wesley ran out of the room and was headed towards the bedroom of Prince Humperdinck. Count Ruggin looked at him, and asked him, "Who is he? He sort of looks familiar. Have they met before?" Seeing the scars on his face, he mentioned that he is the child he disciplined. "I guess you didn't learn your lesson. Oh well, at least I will get the other sword from you this time." Inigo took the advice of Wesley and he fought with grace and ferocity, and every time he prepared to attack. Inigo said, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepare to die." He kept saying that over and over again, almost like a chant, until Ruggin screamed for him to stop saying that. As he said that, he managed to take the sword from Ruggin. "Offer money." Ruggin said that he will give him as much money as he wants. Inigo cut him again, "Offer me to give me what I want most." Ruggin was now scared and said that yes, he will grant his heart's longing. As he said that, Inigo scowled, "I want my father, you son of a b." As he slashed and cut him through the abdomen. So Ruggin begs for his life and turns to Viola and asks for help. She tells him that yes, her friend can help him, but it might come at a cost that he is nothing willing to normally pay. "I don't care about the cost, whatever it is, I just don't want to die." Minerva throws a bottle at him and tells him to drink it if he really means it. Ruggin without a second thought drank the entire bottle, and immediately began to fall on the floor in pain. He screamed in agony, and for some strange reason, his voice became more and more delicate, with a clear feminine tone. As the pain finally ended, the once man stood up as his clothes had ripped, and now he found himself to be a woman, and he was checking his body and was smiling. That was magnificent. I never felt such pleasure in my life, to think that there was a potion that can do this. So the cost of me living is for me to feel pain and turn into a busty brunette? Minerva told her that no, the cost is, well, how was the best way to put it, you took his life away when you killed his father, now you will give him life by having his children. Inigo said, "Doesn't he have a say in this?" To which both Viola and Minerva said, "No, you had your revenge, now you will make him suffer by being her husband." To his shock, the former Count Ruggin was more than willing to do just that, as she ran towards him to grab him in a hug and kissed him on the lips. Fezzik was in tears. "Can I be your best man?" As Buttercup came into the royal honeymoon suite with her two sisters, they were all ready to stab themselves when they heard Wesley say, "It would be truly a shame if you three died, considering I came all this way to save you." They immediately saw him on the bed, and they all jumped on it and began to kiss him. "We did something awful, the wedding happened." Wesley asked them did they mention the vows. They did mention that they did mention the vows, but then he asked if they said "I do." All three began to think really hard, and said no, they were sort of rushed, so they never had a chance to. So Wesley told them that technically they are not married. "Isn't that right, Your Majesty?" Prince Humperdinck said that it was a technically that could be quickly fixed. Now begins their fight to the death, to which Wesley said that he would rather fight to the pain. Humperdinck said that he was not familiar with that phrase, and Wesley told him that he would use small words so that a wart-faced buffoon like him could understand. Wesley said that he would cut off his legs from the knee, his arms from the elbows, he would cut out his tongue, his nose was next, then his left eye followed by his right eyes, then my ears. I get it, let's get on with it. Wesley said no, he gets to keep his perfect ears, and he tells him, this is why, so every child, every woman that sees you will scream at how hideous you are, scream about what on earth is that disgusting thing over there, and all those screams shall echo in your perfect ears. I leave you to live in misery forever. Humperdinck said that he was bluffing, the only reason he is just talking is that he doesn't have the strength to get up from that bed. You might be right, and I don't have the strength, or I might have the strength after all. He got off the bed, he pulled out a sword and pointed at Humperdinck and told him to drop his sword. He immediately dropped it, and began to sob, saying this is impossible, he should be dead, to which Wesley simply said he got better. He immediately told him to sit on the chair, and that they could tie him up as tightly as they want. That is when Inigo, Countess Ruggin, Viola, and Minerva came running towards the room, finding the prince tied up. Well, I think you took care of him, here catch. Inigo threw him the sword and he caught it, with a swift motion he pulled it out and slashed in the air, causing the bed sheet to split in half. Buttercup and her sisters asked why did he do that, to test the quality of the blade. It is impressive indeed, so did you manage to kill the count? Inigo said yes and no. Wesley asked for clarification on what did he mean by that, then the woman near him said that technically she was once the count in question and now she is the future wife of Inigo Montoya. Wesley said that he must have missed a lot. Miracle Max had a potion that can do that. Minerva said that no, the potion was actually one of her creations. Your parents must be very proud. Kind of makes me wish I had accepted your father's deal. Blossom, Buttercup, and Bubbles surrounded Viola and Minerva and began to look them over. Yes, we approve of that deal, just as long as they realize we are the head wives of this HRM of yours. Just make sure you don't neglect us, darling. Hearing a voice from outside the window, they looked out the window, and they see Fezzik. Hey, I found all of these horses, it would be a complete waste not to use them. Are you able to catch us? Buttercup asked. Buttercup, without being able to listen to the answer, jumped out the window. As she safely was placed on the ground, each woman jumped out the window as he caught one at a time and placed them on the ground, leaving Wesley and Inigo in the room. You know, now that you have got your revenge, have you considered a career in piracy? I will need a successor, and you would make a great Dread Pirate Roberts, but be warned, the vengeance has no gold in it. Inigo begins to laugh. You know, I have spent so many years of my life dedicated to revenge. I had no idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life, but since you asked, yes, that would be nice. Shaking his hand, Inigo felt a bit of a shock go through his arm when he shook hands with Wesley. I will train you for a year, and after that, I will get to retire. I shall be your first mate, and call you Dread Pirate Roberts. Inigo agreed and Wesley jumped out the window. Fezzik caught him and put him on the horse with Buttercup. Inigo then jumped and was caught as well. As they all rode away towards the sunset on white horses, Buttercup and Wesley kissed, but it was one of the most passionate kisses that anyone had ever seen. They say that 5 kisses were the most passionate, but this one blew them away. The end. Nana asked, what do you think of the story now? Lena Lee said that it was amazing. Izuku said that it was inspiring. He mentioned that he always admired All Might, but now he sort of wishes that he was also a hero like the Dread Pirate Roberts. So Granny, can we hear the story again? Nana smiled and she closed the book. She just said, as you wish. Walking out of the room, Nana found her daughter standing near the door. So when are you going to tell 3 that their father is the 26th person who became the Dread Pirate Roberts? Inko looked at her mother and began to look at the door. I want to tell them about their father, but if All for One knew that they were his children, he would kill them, just like he has killed so many of the other people who became the Dread Pirate Roberts. Nana told her daughter that she knows that he has killed 9 of them already, all due to the fear of that particular quirk. I do hope Toshinori can keep my little grandkid safe. You know that Toshinori plans to make Izuku his successor. Even though One for All has not left me, and he still has it himself, I can't believe that he has a copy of it and that it was copied and didn't transfer like we thought it did. Inko said that his cold should be over by tomorrow. They still need to get him ready to go to elementary school. His sister will be there to start getting them to learn some things before they get to 1st grade. They already know the colors, letters, and numbers, so that is pretty good. But what she really wanted to ask is what was so funny that she was smiling when she left the room. Nana told her that they first were complaining that the story she was reading was boring, but in the end, they asked if they could hear it again later. I don't know, they sort of remind me of when you and your big brother were little since you two complained the same way. Well sweetie, I need to go and check with Toshinori. I will see you later. Just remember they deserve to know about their father. After all, he is a target of All for One. So far he has been the only one that has been able to fight against All for One. I remember his predecessor. If it wasn't for him I would be dead right now. I can't believe Steve Midoriya, when I fought my final battle against All for One, I should have died, but Steve saved me and fought against All for One. He knew that he couldn't beat him but he prevented him from killing me. He died instead of me. However, I couldn't get away to save my life. When he was about to kill me he heard a man laugh, saying, "Is this how you are going to get your revenge?" Turning around he saw Steve getting back up. All for One screamed and told him that it is impossible, that he already killed him, to which Steve said that he had quite a few tricks under his sleeves. But is this how you plan to make her suffer? To get your revenge? You know that killing her will just end up ending her misery. Considering that everything you do after her death is meaningless, you could kill her entire family, and it would not matter since she was already dead. Not a very good plan in my opinion. Living to see everything you love, everything you value, crushed and destroyed, would be a far worse fate than death, don't you think so? All for One asked why is he telling him this. You claim to be the Demon King, but instead you act like a spoiled BRT throwing a tantrum when things don't go your way. I was once a teacher, I guess you can simply call it a professional habit. All for One begins to laugh. Should the Demon King want her to suffer as much as possible? Yes, that sounds right. I will make her suffer a little bit more than just letting her live. He walks over to her and places his hand on her face, and transfers the quirk that can double a person's lifespan. He smirks and tells them both that there is no hurry, he can kill them another day, and disappears. All for One called one of his followers to him since he needed to absorb that quirk again, and once he did he will just need to get a new one later, no major problem. Instead he needs to think of a way to kill these blasted pirates more efficiently considering that the one he currently fought managed to stay alive. Nana tells her daughter that she will talk with her later, and she left the house, heading towards the home of Toshinori. Izuku and his siblings were in for quite the shock the following day. The story of the Dread Pirate Roberts was not fiction at all. The current Dread Pirates Roberts was their father. The fact is that their father had said nothing about this before. He didn't want his children to suddenly begin to brag about it, which would earn the attention of a very dangerous individual. The retirement of so many previous Dread Pirate Roberts had nothing to do with the fact that they wanted to retire and have a peaceful life. It had more to do with the fact that they were actively being hunted by a powerful and evil person known as All for One. Izuku decided that since the day was such a peaceful day, he would walk around the local park and try to get some exercise done. His two uncles told him many times that if he wants to be just like his hero, he would have to be strong, smart, and agile, so exercise was a major aspect of his life. He was lightly jogging through the park when he saw something strange: a couple arguing with their daughter, and as he got closer it was clear the girl had done nothing wrong. Instead, they were arguing about how to best deal with the evil villainous quirk that their daughter had. That is when he decided to talk with the couple and ask them what was wrong. Of course, tried to say nothing was wrong and that he must be mistaken. That is when Izuku repeated their words, and that is when they dropped their excuses. The father was disgusted with the fact that his daughter could only activate her quirk by drinking the BLD of other people, and this only managed to make her look like the person she drank the BLD from. The mother was calling her no better than a monster, a vampire, an unholy creature that should never see the light of day. The girl simply was sad. The fact is that Izuku looked at them both and began to shake his head. Sir, your daughter's quirk is immensely useful, for anything from stealth in a hostage situation or investigation of a criminal group. She can pretend to be one of them perfectly and save countless lives. Her quirk, however, does have a drawback, and that is that she needs to drink BLD regularly. In fact, some pro-heroes need to drink BLD to do their job, and that is why the country established a BLD donation bank for these heroes to use. So your daughter will be fine, as long as she as of right now drinks a little BLD from trusted sources, or else you will make her a villain by driving her insane due to her inability to properly use her quirk and compounding instances of that negative drawback. The father looked almost sorry for what he said. After he heard his boy say this, a little boy understood the situation better than he did, and he was an adult, and what is worse, he was right, he had been treating his daughter horribly. Izuku then turned and talked with the girl's mother. Ma'am, you believe that her abilities are evil if not outright demonic due to some deeply held religious belief, but let's put theology aside. I tell you here and now, that it is not the nature of a quirk that makes the quirk evil, but rather the person is evil or good depending on how they decide to use it. I will give you 2 examples. A person can run so fast that he is practically invisible. Let's call him Flash. Flash uses his speed quirk to stop a bunch of crooks from robbing a bank by running into the bank that they are robbing, and grabbing each one, knock him out and take him outside to leave him tied up for the police to take them into custody. Heroic, right? But what if I told you instead Flash, while the bank is being robbed, he runs fast enough to get into the vault and takes as much money as he can carry, and leaves without the people or the crooks knowing he was even there? Not so heroic. So is the speed quirk heroic or villainous? The mother realized that she had been stereotyping her daughter, and she apologized to her for doing that she should know better than to call her quirk villainous when she could very well use it for good, having listened to what this boy told her husband. That is when the girl became happier and asked the boy, who was her age, what was his name. He simply told her that his name was izukumidoriya. She blushed and told him that her name was Himiko Toga. Izuku smiled as she told her name. Toga, we just met, and I do hope your parents will let you drink a little blood each day to make you feel less pain, and believe me, you can be a pro hero if you want to be. There is a pro hero that had a blood quirk, his name is Vlad King. So I know we just met, but would you like to be my friend? Izuku was almost afraid of her saying no as he asked Toga, but much to his shock Toga jumped at him and pulled him into a hug as she said yes, she wants to be his friend. This made both of her parents realize she wasn't some monster, she was just their adorable little girl. Both parents understood that what they were thinking was mistaken, and for a child as old as their daughter to figure it out, they sort of laughed and said that Izuku must have a super intelligence quirk. That is when he shocked both of them that in fact, he didn't have a quirk at all. That was why he was running in the park as his morning exercise routine. No matter if he had a quirk or not, however, he will become a pro hero and use his training and studies to do it, even if he had no quirk at all. The father looked almost concerned for him when he told Izuku that hero work is very dangerous and without an appropriate and powerful quirk it would be impossible for him to do hero work. That is when Izuku told him that there were plenty of pro heroes that didn't have a powerful combat-related quirk, such as a man by the name of Eraserhead. His only quirk apparently allows him to stop the quirk of a person for some time, and yet he still does pro hero work with nothing more than his physical abilities. Izuku even suggested if he didn't believe a person without a quirk could be a hero to read a DC comic of a hero whose name was Batman. In their world, he would be considered a mighty pro hero, but in reality, he had no powers, he was just an ordinary person, only using his training, his wits, and gadgets to capture criminals. Before he left he told Toga that the world was not all black and white, some villains do what they do because they think they are doing it to help people, and some heroes commit evil acts because they think they can get away with it. Not all heroes are angelic, and not all villains are demonic, it all depends on the individual. This made both parents realize that as long as Toga had some blood each day, and she was taught how to practice with her quirk in private, she could be a very effective pro hero. Her father however had one simple question: why would he go out of his way to help her, or anyone? He didn't know Toga and didn't owe her or her family any favors, so the question that he had repeating inside his mind was why? Why did he help? What was his reason for getting involved and resolving their family problem? Izuku simply laughed and told him and his mother he was simply following an example and ideals of a childhood idol, to help those in need without hesitation or expecting a reward with a smile. This made the man think that maybe Izuku was a person who greatly respected and idolized the hero All Might, and at one point in Izuku's life that would have been true, but the truth is the person he mentioned was someone far closer than All Might. It was his father, the dread Pirate Roberts. Well, he knew that he couldn't mention it in case the enemy had people watching him. It was supposed to be a secret that he was the son of the current dread pirate, but it was such a secret he never had a picture of his dad or even met him in his entire life. He could only think that the danger this person was to his family was so great that they had to take these extreme measures, which to Izuku meant this enemy was not one to be taken lightly or ignore the fact that he was a major threat. Toga and her folks got a few dozen tips on how to help her develop and control her quirk after Izuku spent a few minutes thinking about her quirk, and especially after she took a bit of his BLD and changed into him before his very eyes. His mind went into overdrive, and in a matter of minutes he had devices the tips and advice he gave Toga and her parents. They all had to leave for home, but Toga was very glad she met Izuku. Her mother teased, telling Izuku that maybe her little girl had developed a crush on him. As the family left, Izuku continued his walk through the park until he saw something that caught his attention. It seems that a young girl close to her age was walking around on her own, but somehow he knew that she was secretly surrounded by guards. To most people, they looked like people who were around the area, but to Izuku they were a little too obvious in how they communicated using their earpieces and the way they walked, almost like it was just a very well routine to keep the person they were guarding safe. The thing that caught his attention most was that one man was hiding where people couldn't even detect him, and he was wearing a strange metal mask, and dark clothes, almost like he wanted to blend with the very shadows. He however could not feel any malicious intent coming from the man. That was the strange thing. Here was a man hiding, one could even say stalking this girl, and he didn't feel like he had any bad intentions toward her at all. In fact, it almost felt like he was keeping an eye on her in case her guard screwed up. Izuku decided to go and talk with this girl who was getting the whole princess treatment. She might feel a little lonely. He walked up to her and without even a moment's hesitation simply greeted her like he would greet anyone else. She was at first shocked, then after she calmed down, she laughed. "So you are Izukumidoriya, nice to meet you. I am Momo Yaoyorozu. I came to meet people so I can chat with. But for some strange reason people have been avoiding me." Izuku simply told her that she may have dressed as everyone else, but there were still many people who knew of her family's business. After all, they are probably scared to offend her and earn the ire of her family. He also mentioned that the guards were talking to each other with their earpieces. They might look like plainclothes people, but the way they behaved sort of made Izuku think they were people guarding the president of a country or a very high dignitary. So Izuku offered to help her train her social and conversation skills, something Momo was quite happy to have someone to walk and talk with as they went to all the places nearby that Momo wanted to know more about. It seems her quirk was one that used calories to create anything she could think of, as she immediately created something before Izuku. The minute he saw that, he began to think and analyze what he saw. Much like with Toga, he began to study her quirk at a high speed, and if anything people around him found his muttering to be a little weird. But that was only the way his boy reacted, since if anyone could listen to it in slow motion, he was saying his observations, it sounded like muttering to everyone else due to the speed. He opened his eyes and looked at Momo and asked her if she could write a few things down. He began to tell her the tips and strategies he came up with to better help her train using her quirk. It was much to the surprise Momo quite detailed and carefully thought ideas. When a group of men tried to kidnap Momo, the guard had been knocked out thanks to the quirk of someone nearby that could knock out a person in an instant. Izuku got up from his seat and without a word he began to knock out all the minor thugs and tied them up for the police. Momo asked him if he had a martial arts quirk. He laughed and told him no, this was all training and learning martial arts at local dojos. In fact, Izuku as far as he could tell was quirkless. He could however feel the one that had been hiding in the shadows had taken off towards the boss of this particular Yakuza group. The leader of this group of men would later be found killed and left in a rather gruesome manner, almost like the killer wanted to scare those that tried to do the same as the dead man did and think twice before ever doing that. According to Izuku, when his parents asked, he said the vigilante was too merciful for his good, killing them minimized their pain and suffering, and having to live 3 years in prison and then suffer the consequences of their actions was much harsher. The group more than likely wanted to kidnap Momo because she is the heir apparent of a millionaire family. They probably didn't even think about the fact that her family's company was a research and technological powerhouse. No, they didn't kidnap her to make them some incredible new weapon they could use for a higher rewarding criminal goal. No, they probably wanted to kidnap her for money, and that was it. He did give her quite a few tips when they talked and in fact, helped her get used to socializing with people. Her mother asked what was he planning to do next. and he simply said he had to attend his martial arts class, and then he planned to work hard in the gym he was a member of. That is when his mother reminded him about his homework, to which Izuku told her he had already done it before he got back home. He wanted to hand it to the teacher, but the teacher simply asked him to hand it in with everyone else. Honestly, Mom, I often get the feeling that the teacher simply doesn't care about what I do in the class, because according to my records I am quirkless. Thanks to the martial arts classes and the way I have been working out I am not getting bullied, but that does mean that I do get blamed for beating up students who tried to bully me. He walked towards the place where he was learning martial arts, which was owned and taught by a former pro hero who was an expert martial artist. He stopped by a tree, looked up, and let out a sigh. Look, Kaizome, your stealth ability would be great for anyone else, but I know you are there, and honestly I'd rather you come down here and tell me what you want instead of wasting time like this. The vigilante dropped down to where he was and looked at Izuku with a rather shocked look on his face and asked how did he know who he was. Izuku told him that a record of all vigilantes is available for the general public and not many of them had a good enough stealth to match him, so through simply elimination, he knew his name, and even saw many testimonies about his quirk. You messed up, you could have captured those Yakuza, the authorities would have information about the other members of their group or at the very least who hired them to kidnap the daughter of a tech mogul. But no, you ended up killing them, and worse, you left them in such a horrible state that now other Yakuza groups will get even more violent simply from rage or wanting to avenge their fallen, and this coming from an elementary school student. What were you thinking? Kaizome actually began to scratch the back of his head and looked sort of embarrassed after hearing Izuku say that. He told Izuku that in fact, he did plan to capture them, but they suddenly tried to kill him when he asked them to surrender, that their plan had failed, and so he tried to block their attacks, and doing so caused all of them to injure themselves more or less trying to kill him. As such he got a brief taste of their BLD. So he thought that using fear he could cause them to become so scared that they would give up. Instead, after using his quirk, every single Yakuza that had once attacked them dropped dead from having each a heart attack. Izuku told him to use his quirk on him, and sure enough, the glare that he felt when Kaizome used his quirk was frightening, but at the moment he was analyzing the quirk, so he sort of put his feelings aside to be more clear in his analysis. Quirk mishaps do happen during hero work, it can't be avoided. I see what your quirk is, using BLD to synchronize with the target and using killer intent projected through your glare to terrify your target. You are doing this because you know some heroes are doing this for fame and glory, which is pathetically wrong. Kaizome understood what Izuku was saying and was impressed that a kid managed to learn so much about his quirk after seeing and feeling it once. Very well, I shall give you 20 tips to help you improve your control over your quirk. However, I want you to do something, become a pro hero, get your license, and work with a hero that you can learn from as your mentor and moral guide. I suggest All Might. The man could use all the help he can get. I also plan to become a pro hero. We can't leave the responsibility and burden to protect innocent people all to All Might, can we? Kaizome had to admit that he always admired All Might and his pure heroic attitude, so it was easy for him to agree with Kaizome, and the masked man was quite impressed with the 20 things he told him about how to improve his quirk and how to control it, and this was from a 7-year-old. As he left he asked Izuku if his quirk was a super intelligence quirk, to which Izuku left laughing as he told Kaizome that in fact, he was quirkless. Kaizome began to walk with Izuku, wanting to see where was the kid going. It was until he stopped at a martial arts dojo that Kaizome asked him why didn't he ask why he needed to wear a mask. Izuku stopped as they were closer to the dojo and simply said that Kaizome wore a mask either to hide his identity or because he wanted to keep his face hidden. Having a secret identity was usually done, however, to allow heroes to be able to do their work without fearing for the safety of their friends and family, since villains would want to get revenge on the hero who ruined their scheme. Kaizome said that is normally true, but it was also because he didn't have the most visually attractive face and his face tends to frighten innocent people, to which Izuku told him to consider this a motivation to work hard as a pro hero. He has access to both a salary and to medical facilities that he would not have as a vigilante, so working as part of All Might's hero agency would help him get the medical treatment so that he could walk around the public without having to hide his face. Kaizome stopped and said that he could only say that because he had never seen his face. Izuku, taking this as a challenge, told him to take off the mask and show him. There was no one near them, making the sign of hit me with your best shot. Kaizome took off his mask thinking that this will frighten the kid into realizing his condition was not that bad, but much to his shock Izuku, instead of feeling afraid, laughed and told him that if that was his concern, that wasn't as bad as he thinks. Izuku had seen worse-looking faces in history books. As Kaizome watched Izuku walk into the dojo, this made the masked man feel something he hadn't felt in a very long time, a feeling he couldn't place since it was rare for him, but he guessed it was hope for the future. This made the man who thought only through the killing of villains would he improve the world change his outlook on life, and now, thanks to a recommendation from Nana Shimura's grandson, he had a future as someone who will work side by side with his idol, All Might. As he left the area and they both went their way, Kaizome went to the All Might Hero Agency, and as Izuku was walking away, as he reached a street, a black van pulled up, and without any word they sprayed some gas on his face. He was feeling sleepy as the men jumped out, grabbed him and tossed him into the van, as the last things he heard was the wheels screech as they took off at high speed. Just his luck, he managed to convince a vigilante to turn a new leaf, and soon after he got kidnapped by the very same group of Yakuza that tried to kidnap Momo. In another location, a woman was called by the Hero Public Safety Commission. It seems that they found an immensely dangerous criminal that pretended to be a hero, but at the moment he had arranged for his fake capture by a group of Yakuza to meet them for a secret meeting between this heartless individual and the group for some plot that would cause severe harm to the public and could be a major threat to hero society as a whole, so she was told to eliminate both the Yakuza and the guy who pretended to be captured by them. For the greater good of hero society, these people had to be eliminated. The hero known as Lady Nagant was a very respected spy and extremely capable combatant. Her sniper skills were even better than a person whose very quirk was for that purpose. She worked for the Hero Public Safety Commission thinking that what she did was for the safety and good of all innocent people, but she was far from naive. She keeps an eye on all actual heroic actions within the country, so she decided to go and meet this fake hero and these Yakuza to see what the plot was and what their real connections were. Maybe get a little information to see if someone else was connected to this nefarious group before she decided to eliminate them. As soon as she made it to the building that supposedly had the group of villains, she sneaked through the vents and managed to get inside, only to hear a young boy ask the Yakuza why the hell they kidnap him, to which the Yakuza first told him that they got hired by a group that wanted him out of the way, cause his unofficial acts of heroism was being a major pain for the group, which they knew to be true since he managed to ruin their chances to kidnap the girl of that rich tech inventor, as the group he mentioned before had also requested. For some strange reason, whenever the boy asked them anything, they simply told him whatever he wanted to know without making any attempt to even ignore his questions. The second thing he asked was what was supposed to happen to him. The Yakuza began to laugh and told him to relax. At most they were supposed to hold him for a week at most, and if everything goes as planned they would get what the group who requested his kidnapping demanded, his release. If not, sadly they would have to kill him. They can't simply leave any witnesses or loose ends. That made Izuku wonder who asked for all this, the attempted kidnapping of Momo and his kidnapping, but as the group went each lunch to another room he asked one of the youngest members of the group that kidnapped him, as he laughed like an absolute maniac, and simply looked at Izuku, since you are more than likely going to die, why not tell you who wants you dead this much? You are not going to believe this, and I swear on the Yakuza code I ain't shitting you. The group that requested the kidnapping of that rich girl and yours was none other than the Hero Public Safety Commission. Izuku looked at him and wondered, what the hell is this guy snorting to make him this crazy? Look, from the way you are looking at me you think I am nuts, and I get it. I think this is nuts too. Who would have thought that the Hero Public Safety Commission would ask Yakuza's to commit crimes? What is next, judges taking orders from all for one? Sorry kid, but we both know they will never give them what they want. Your family is not that rich, to begin with, so most likely you will die. So I decided to tell you this so that at least you know the reason and to ease my guilty conscience. Killing a kid as young as my kid brother, even I think this is sick. As Izuku finally understood what was going on, it seemed that people didn't like the fact that he actively helped people. Well, that is pretty ridiculous coming from an organization with the words public safety in their title. Maybe it was sarcasm or an attempt to hide the fact that they were self-serving bureaucrats who wanted to make as much money as possible with little concern with the actual public. That didn't improve his current situation at all. Well, so far the guy who just kept an eye on him was pretty decent. If anything, it made him almost feel like he was keeping him safe. And then there was the person hiding near the ceiling, probably hidden in one of the rafters that held up the roof. Izuku just wondered how long this person would sit up there listening to their entire conversation. It was until the Izuku guy left that she decided to jump down and go walk towards Izuku, and he had to admit the lady was quite a looker if he could exclude the fact that she was aiming a rifle at him at the first moment he saw her. "So who are you, kid, and where is the villain that pretends to be a hero who was faking being captured by these crooks?" Izuku looked at her and simply told her he was the only person held captive here, and the supposed crooks, yes, they are Yakuza, but apparently, they were working on the orders of another group that was either the Hero Public Safety Commission or a group pretending to be them, but it was more than likely the HPSC was ticked off that he actively either ruined their schemes or helped people in ways that would gain them no recognition. That is when she finally decided to ask him what was his name. She immediately retracted her rifle the minute she heard who this person was. She was shocked that the HPSC had sent her to kill the grandson of Nana Shimura, and it was the kid that for several months had been going around helping people. This was insane. The HPSC sent her here to kill supposed dangerous criminals and villains that could destroy society, but instead, there were some hired goons and a kid that was so heroic it was not hard for her to imagine this kid would one day be a pro-hero. Even at the tender age of 7 she doubted someone this cute would even think of doing anything as horrible as the HPSC told her he probably planned. Wait, did she just call him cute? Sorry Izuku, it seems that I was sent here on a pack of lies. Now that I think of it, there are a lot of these missions that now thinking about it didn't make much sense. But I honestly believe the HPSC was doing all that for the greater good. They call me Lady Nagant, you can call me Kana. My real name is Kana Tsutsumi. Do you have any idea what I am supposed to do now? I know you are a kid, but somehow you seem to think things through as if you were older, so any good ideas? Izuku told her why not use the fact that their boss was pretty much going to use them as sacrificial lambs, get these Yakuza to spill the beans of everything the HPSC ever asked them to do, if for no other reason than pure revenge against the group that wanted to use them and then toss them aside like a used-up piece of toilet paper. As for who to tell this to? Not the police, since they work extensively with the HPSC, and would never believe them to be anything than paragons of virtue. Instead, why not free him, and together they can talk with Dean Nizu of UA, he would be far more willing to help them with their situation. He asked why would they not simply talk to his grandmother's apprentice All Might. Izuku simply said that Nizu would be a better choice. All Might, as powerful as he was also just as forgiving if given a chance. Nizu, on the other hand, would see their actions as potential harm to his students. And as such there is nothing Nizu was unwilling to do to make sure the students in UA or any former students would be safe from the schemes and plotting of the HPSC. Nizu even stated he is part bear, and bears tend to be very protective of those they care about. Kana had to agree that he was always the sort of person who would be willing to help any student that had any problems, so after getting him free, that is when they both decided to march right towards the leader of the captures. And she told them exactly what the HPSC told her to do. It didn't help that they did that through a communicator that she had modified to record any instructions that she received, something about it making it easier for her to remember the objectives of her missions. The leader of the group was particularly pissed when he realized that their employer was going to have them all killed to hide their greedy little hands and to keep their precious image clean. If the Yakuza were killed and the kid was found dead, the HPSC could go as far as to ask for better funding so they can fight against the evil group that killed an innocent child, using their deaths as a means to get more money and even bolster their popularity. That is when the Yakuza, without even being asked, handed her a copy of every single order sent by their employers, and they swore that if they need help to take them down, just to call them. It would be an absolute joy to make those backstabbers pay. Kana was shocked to hear this, and as she was provided with a car, she began to drive toward UA and asked Izuku if he had any idea why would the Yakuza leader be that furious. Izuku began to count off his ideas with the fingers of his right hand. 1. He was upset that the HPSC was going to cheat them and not pay them, if not also kill them. 2. The next reason was probably that he hates traitors with a passion. And last but not least, his would allow them to get out of his alive since she didn't kill them after they handed her that information. It was probably something to do with the old Yakuza code of honor. She asked him what is he even talking about. As the drive was going to take some time, Izuku began to explain that Yakuza was initially a group of people that provided security and safety for their communities. At times they often deal with the aftermath of natural disasters, as provide relief aid and medical assistance to those in need, so they had a deep and complex code of honor that traditionally all yakuza follow, and breaking that code was pretty much a declaration of suicide. As they finally reached the gates of UA, Izuku simply held out a small disc, and as soon as he was near the gates opened automatically, and even the disc began to flash a direction arrow to the nearest parking spot. They finally made it into the building and decided to climb up to the second floor towards the dean's office. As they reached the door, Izuku knocked, and as he did, a person with a rather small and high-toned voice said that they could enter. The fact is that Izuku knew exactly who this was. After all, he had been getting lessons from this person for quite some time. He even decided to call him something that to present embarrassed Izuku, but couldn't tell anyone about it out of fear of hurting this person's feelings, or fear. As they walked in, Nizu was seen walking on his desk towards them. "Ah, Izuku, my boy, so glad to see you, and it is always a pleasure to see alumni back at UA. To what do I owe this pleasant visit?" Izuku told Nizu, the small chimera wearing a suit and red tie, that he was just kidnapped by a group of thugs who were hired by the least likely group, and Lady Nagant just rescued him, and since she knows about this group she decided to come to UA to tell Nizu what happened to Izuku and everything she knows about this group. Nizu asked in a very serious and cold voice if this was a joke, who would dare to kidnap his protégé. Lady Nagant saw that Nizu was not angry, he was livid, so she decided to defuse the situation, or at the very least try. Izuku was kidnapped by a group of Yakuza who were hired and had no clue that the people that hired them were planning to kill them and Izuku. As for who hired them, sorry to say that I was sent to eliminate the Yakuza, and they expected me to kill Izuku by lying to me, that he was a villain out to destroy the world. As to who hired the Yakuza and sent me, the Hero Public Safety Commission. Izuku could swear he heard someone growling, and the sound of a beast snarling for a second after she finished saying that. Those BSTRDS, I knew they were corrupt beyond measure, but to dare to try and murder my precious protégé, that makes them practically suicidal, cause nobody messes with Izuku without facing me. I am going to get these stupid BSTRDS for daring to do something like this. Izuku mentioned that probably the Yakuza clan leader will want to make them suffer a whole lot worse since they hired his men and then tried to rip off their clan by killing their men to avoid paying them. Izuku, I often told you that I don't usually agree with the actions of villains and criminal groups. It is simply because I have spent so many years trying to be a good educator for future new pro-heroes. In this instance I have to agree with the Yakuza. Those BSTRDS deserve to suffer for what they tried to do. I never thought that this would ever happen, me agreeing with a criminal. Besides that, I am glad you came, Izuku. I could use your help in helping a young man learn about his family quirk. Izuku of course would be happy to help Nizu with anything. He spent so many hours teaching him, it would only be proper to show his gratitude. Glad to hear it. As soon as you help this young man, and also end up helping his father, I will arrange a place for Lady Nagant to stay at UA. She is a very important witness to what I have planned against the corrupt members of the HPSC, and I will have one of our teachers make sure you make it back home, and if you take too long, don't worry. I will have a room for you to stay here and you will be able to get home the following day. I will, of course, call your mother if that happens. Nizu pulled a file from his desk and handed it over to Izuku. Now the young man I would ask you to help him understand his quirk is named Todoroki. You might be able to tell by the family name since you are such a fan of pro-heroes and their quirks, and you would be correct, this is the son of Endeavor. Endeavor has been having some trouble getting his son to learn moderation and to control his flames. Since you are here, I am hoping that your ability to study and analyze quirks will help you explain to this young man what he needs to know about his quirk. Izuku told Nizu that he would be happy to see his quirk and help him any way he can. After all, Izuku was quirkless himself. But if his ability to understand quirks was any help, why would he ever consider saying no? Nizu began to give Izuku a grand tour of the place till they finally reached a field where a young man was trying very hard to train his quirk to be as destructive or powerful as possible. Seeing the quirk in action immediately, Kana was surprised at the rapid muttering Izuku was doing and wondered if he was alright. Nizu quickly told her that Izuku's mind tends to go overdrive when he is analyzing a quirk he just saw for the first time. In a matter of a minute he walked over to Toya and told him what he was doing wrong, the dangers of doing what he was doing, that his attempts could end up burning him to death. Self-cremation was not exactly a pleasant way to go, And he began to tell him of 30 ways he could train his quirk more efficiently, telling him that control was more important because without it, the quirk is as much of a danger to himself as it was to those he wanted to use the quirk on. Toya came to understand that this was the reason why his father told him to stop training, and how foolish he was for thinking that his father said that because he thought he was an untalented fool. It wasn't because he saw Toya as a person who was a waste of time to train, or weak, it was a concern for the safety of his son. Didn't stop him out of scorn but rather fatherly love. This made the young man cry and hug his father, the one that could only look at the boy who had talked to the boy who talked with his son and could only say 2 words, "Thank you." In the next 2 years, Izuku would increase his physical training to one day be strong enough to one day withstand the power of One for All, his mental training to not be corrupted by that much power, and his lessons with Nizu got tougher and tougher as time went on. It was during middle school that he met a man who could make clones of himself, and Jin Babigawara's life would forever change. One look at his quirk, and thanks to all the lessons and training, he in a matter of seconds taught him everything he needed to know about his quirk and the true nature of his clones. If he made clones that remained for too long, that clone becomes a real person. At that point, it is not a question of who is the original or who is the real one, cause if the clone lives long enough they both are. If this happens, he suggested that a person with a modification quirk can give them a new face and even change their voice so that the clone that has become real can lead a life of his very own. Jean was happy to hear this, and the fact that he knew this meant so did all his clones. The days of fighting to find who the real one was over, and he will never have to deal with the horror of seeing many copies of himself kill each other. This allowed the man to actively seek Nizu to be trained to become a pro hero, and sure enough, he set a time limit on how long the clone could remain thanks to the observations of his friend Izuku. Little by little, without even knowing it, Izuku was dismantling the organization that would be known as the League of Villains, and All for One was furious about it. This was no better to the self-proclaimed Demon King than having to deal with the dread Pirate Roberts and all his successors. Izuku was one day told that his family will go on a family trip, a cruise that visits many islands in the Philippines, and even go and see Panama, as they need to go through the canal to reach their final destination, a resort in the Bahamas. However, Izuku was not told that this trip was a planned meeting between his father and him to do as the previous dread Pirates Roberts had done before and pass on his abilities to the next generation, since he was coming closer to the day when he will have to retire. Usually, in the past, the passing of abilities from one captain to the next would happen on the day that the current dread pirate retires, but thanks to the actions of All for One, the time to pass on the abilities to the successor had been decreasing as the very danger of All for One killing the current dread pirate became more of a reality. That is why his father would pass on to his 9-year-old son his abilities as a safeguard against the schemes and plots of All for One, who would want nothing more than to see the abilities of the dread pirate end with the current one. The fact is that these abilities provided the person who has them with immense emotional and physical well-being, and go as far as to make the person stronger to the extent that it increased the lifespan of the user. It made no sense to a common person why would All for One not want these abilities, which were a quirk that could be copied from one person to another. The answer is simple: the quirk All for One is a corruptive one that would destroy the personality and even soul of the person who obtains it, and in a very essence the quirk will become the new soul of that body. No better than the having the person's body stolen by a malevolent parasite. The danger of the quirk that gets passed down from one dread pirate to the next was because by its very nature it would destroy anything harmful or corruptive in a person's body. Therefore, if a person passed down All for One instead of gaining a new body, the quirk and the villain that forced this quirk on the one possessing the quirk of the dread pirate would be killed completely. This one quirk was that dangerous to All for One, since if he ever came to possess it, it would mean his doom. All for One got a group of men to attack the ship that held the family of the current dread pirate to lure him out of hiding, as he hoped that doing this will allow him to eliminate him and make him suffer by making him watch his family die. That is how deep his hatred of the dread pirate was. He has killed many of the previous ones, and it frustrated him that he had failed to eliminate the quirk that was so dangerous to him. The next thing that had him this furious was that the boy who would be his next perfect vessel was completely out of his reach, since his grandmother had made the boy's life happier, and have a stable home. Corrupting him into becoming a hate-filled monster or a villain was impossible. As soon as the ship reached international waters, the ship was attacked by what seemed to be criminals that wanted to either rob or hold the passengers of the cruise ship hostage. the leader of these villains told the captain of the cruise ship that as long as they did everything they ordered, he and the passengers will be safe, but to remember their safety was dependent on their obedience. To many of the families, there was no hope, but Izuku's will was not so easy to shatter, and he knew that someone would rescue them. That was until they saw an incredible ship reach them before they even were aware it was even there. It had the flag of the dread pirate Roberts, and the criminals knew that they were the ones that had no hope. The dread pirate takes no prisoners, and no one survives when he attacks a ship. In a matter of seconds, cannons began to blast the criminal ships, sinking them to a watery grave. As the ship came closer to the cruise ship, they feared that they would be next, having heard the fearsome reputation the dread pirate was well known for. The dread pirate demanded the immediate surrender of the criminals on the ship, or they will sink the cruise ship as they had seen they had done to the ships of their fellow criminals. They immediately surrendered, and as they were hauled into a cage they began to notice something. More people had boarded the ship with them, and that was the actual sinking of their ships had been an optical illusion. The cannons fired something that when it hit the enemy ship would cause everyone to be knocked unconscious for several days. The dread pirate Roberts had captured their entire band of criminals. When one of the captives asked him why not simply kill them, was when Roberts told him because he was not merciful to his enemies. They were placed in cages in the cargo hold, and Roberts decided to meet with the young man who did his best to keep every one of the captives' hopes up. As he walked he noticed his wife, his 2 daughters, and his son, who if this was an ordinary kid should be scared witless, but he was not scared at all, making Roberts very proud of his son. Izuku, you do not have to worry, I am not going to harm your family. I know who you are, izukumidoriya, and I have to say that I am very proud of your actions to help others. I know what you have done, so you relax, know that you have no reason to fear, for I, the dread pirate Roberts, is here. Izuku couldn't help but laugh as he saw him do that pose and heard him say those words, "Dad, please knock it off, I am going to bust a gut laughing." That has to be the most horrible impression of All Might. At least his father knew that his son was relaxed enough for them to talk. Hisashi told his son that he needs to give him his quirk to make sure that there will be the next generation of the dread pirate Roberts. He tells him to grab hold of his hand, and as he does, Hisashi wishes for him to gain a copy of his quirk. The fact is that it would take Izuku a few minutes before he can use his quirk. Well-being for all, he planned to tell him that he was going to take him with him on his ship for a year to train him how to use it. But as this is done in an unexpected turn, All for One showed up and begins attacking the place himself using his arsenal of quirks that he had taken from many other people over the years. The fight was horrible. Many passengers died. Thankfully Hisashi had managed to call 2 of the retired dread pirates Roberts to come to the ship and help and save Izuku, his family, and many passengers. The ones that All for One killed turned out to be decoys they had placed to draw away his attention from the innocent passengers, giving the 2 men to escape with all the passengers and Hisahi's family. With the help of Yoko Sajiri, the first mate to dread pirate Roberts. While all this was happening, All for One was fighting a desperate battle against the current dread pirate Roberts, and he had to use every single quirk he ever obtained to even match him. Somehow his attacks missed him and Roberts simply was able to evade them, but not all of them. As they fought, it finally hit him the realization of what Roberts was doing. This entire fight was nothing more than an attempt by Roberts to buy enough time so that the passengers of the cruise ship could be moved into his ship and make a stealthy getaway. That is why he wasn't attacking at all, he was buying time. It didn't matter what All for One did. As soon as the ship was away at a safe distance, immediately Roberts went on the offensive, and it was a series of brutal attacks, but the toll of the injuries that he suffered during his time buying time for the others to escape from harm began to take their toll on him. All for One had no alternative but to retreat, as Roberts was dead set on killing him. As he left, he at least had the satisfaction of seeing the current dread pirate Roberts fall on the ground, seemingly breathing his last breath. So to him, he succeeded in ending the threat of that quirk once and for all, but he simply didn't know how wrong he was, and how he made things even worse for himself. Izuku had kept an eye on the fight thanks to a spyglass that he took from one of the rooms. Much to his shock, he saw his father get injured and was screaming as he saw his father collapse on the deck of the cruise ship. It was until after the one that attacked the ship had gone through a strange portal made of dark smoke that the crew of the pirate ship finally went to check on their captain, only to find that their captain was dead, before shocking them all as he revived and sat up near his first mate. Roberts knew that he didn't have much time left, so he began to introduce his first mate to his wife, his future widow, and asked her to take care of his family. Inko was sad to learn that her husband had at most 25 hours to live, and so he decided to spend that time explaining to Izuku and his family who it was that attacked their cruise ship, and how Izuku should train himself to be able to become strong enough to defend not only innocent people but also the people that he loves. 5 years later. Waking up from a cold sweat from the same nightmare that he's been having for the last 5 years, every time he goes to sleep he turns his head and sees his stepmother, a woman named Yuko Sajiri, removing the wet cloth from his head. She was introduced by her sister Yoko Sajiri a month after his father's death. 3 years later his mother remarried this appealing woman in his opinion. Getting ready to go to school he sees his stepsister, her name is Seo Hitsuji Sajiri. If there was one thing in his life however Izuku was not happy was the way his best friend turned her back on him the minute she found out he had no quirk, and tried to bully him thinking that quirkless people were not even people at all, they were a waste of space. Izuku, on the final day of middle school after the teacher announced that both Bakugou and Izuku would attempt to take the entrance exam for UA, that Bakugou took Izuku's notebook, the one he was currently writing ideas for his friends, and how to help them with their quirks, and using her explosion quirk caused it to burn before his very eyes. But unknown to anyone he managed to SWCH it with a decoy notebook. Izuku understood that quirk very well, having seen her do that dozen if not hundreds of times, threatening him to stop ever trying to become a pro hero. Izuku asked why did she need to feel like she needed to be the center of everyone's attention, why did she need to be praised for something she was born with rather than something she worked hard to achieve, why use her power to make people cower just so that she can claim to be stronger? That was no better than what a villain does, and yet she keeps screaming that she will be the #1 pro hero. Look Deku, you can't understand it, you will never be able to, you don't have a quirk, a quirkless loser will never understand what a person with a powerful quirk like mine feels or thinks, but you know what Deku, there is hope for you, why don't you go to the roof of this school, take a swan dive off the roof and pray that in your next life you are born with a quirk. Once she heard Deville Stone say that, after her rage for his little lecture ended, she left not believing that he said something that callous and heartless to the boy that she once had a crush on. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Hector Flores on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.